the gas chamber is a uniquely horrible experience.
I hear wonderful stories about it, about how every ounce of fluid will pour from every
gone.
orifice of your face.
Whatever. It's really strange, but I am maybe, with the exception of a couple of things, I'm maybe the least artistic person you can possibly imagine. I was watching your guys' last episode and listening to him talk about everything that he could create with his mind and his eyes and his hands artistically. That's always just, yeah, that's always just blown me away, because I can't do that. I couldn't draw a stick figure with a ruler, and I can't paint. It's one of those things. There's this conversation about nature versus nurture, and I'm not sure. I think that you're born with that aptitude, because there's no explaining how the artistic ability of some people. But anyway, so musically I have some talent, but with photography is not the art and science of picking up a camera, holding it to your eye, or looking at the back of the screen and pointing it at something and clicking and then uploading it to Instagram. It is.
Well, it is for me, but I don't make a living at it.
It's composition. Yeah, well, and see, that's the thing, is not, that's fine. But the problem is that when reasonably decent camera equipment got cheap, everybody, and Facebook was there, everybody went and bought a $500 camera and started a Facebook page and called themselves a photographer. And not once did they ever learn anything about it other than
composition.
They put it on auto and pointed it. So it's about, photography is about composition and about light and shadow. And that's it. That is it. And if you learn how those things work and how to manipulate light, and there's some science to it, but it doesn't involve an advanced degree in physics to kind of get a grasp on how to manipulate light and shadow. But you really have to, it's a full life quest. You can't, there's no thing in life that you have reached the end of and learned everything. I'm here, I'm done, I'm good. So it's an ever evolving thing, but the manipulation of light and shadow and composition. And for some reason, I've always had that eye for composition. I don't know why, I don't know where it came from, but once I discovered that was a thing, I started studying it, and I started studying angles and how to manipulate angles and composition and lines, and add lines and texture into the background of your photos to do things, and how to make, different aspects of people more or less, more flattering, or make certain parts stand out and some parts kind of disappear. But anyway, I don't want to get too far down.
Did you go to school for this?
No, absolutely not.
Wow.
I went to the school of.
Well, you went to Auburn.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to Auburn.
Oh, I thought you did.
Mm-mm.
You're just an Auburn fan.
There is a deep story behind that as well. And boy, you just picked a great week to get into that subject, didn't you?
Sorry.
No, the quick Auburn story as a tangent is that I grew up, where I grew up? I grew up in Marietta, Georgia. I was raised by Georgia Bulldogs. There's a picture of me when I was about 10 years old at Road Atlanta wearing an Atlanta Falcons hat and a Georgia Bulldogs t-shirt, and I wasn't scowling about it. However, my grandparents, so my dad's paternal side of the family is all from basically the upstate of South Carolina, sort of the Abbeville area, which is near Clemson. And so there's that kind of bent for that part of my family. My dad's mother's side of the family is all from sort of Cherokee County, North Atlanta. Mm-hmm. And my grandparents were actually Georgia Tech people. And so my grandparents took me to my very first college football game when I think I was 8.
I
And
think that was the first I did as well.
And it was down at Grant Field, and it was Auburn Georgia Tech game. And they took me as Georgia Tech fans, and I'm 8 years old. I don't know. I'm like, I like the guys in the white. I'm going to pull for them. And so that sort of put it in the back of my head. And then later on, I mentioned my parents' divorce. Well, shortly after my parents split up, January 1st of 1981 happened. And so my grandparents lived in my mother's parents lived in New Orleans. So my dad said, load up, we're going to New Orleans for the Sugar Bowl, because Georgia was playing Notre Dame for the national championship.
Was that the one with Herschel Walker?
Correct. So we went down there, and I was fired up. I was excited. I was going to go not only to I was going to go to a Georgia game. I was going to go to this big time college football game, a bowl game, the Sugar Bowl, the Superdome, the national championship.
With him in it. Oh my God.
Yeah, with my dad, and he took a girl instead.
What?
Can you imagine having all that buildup? But if he had taken me,
that's awful.
That would have been it. That would have been it.
Yeah.
I would have never looked back. But as coincidence would have it, the first guy that my mom dated after my parents' divorce was an architect for a firm downtown Atlanta, and he went to Auburn. So he took me. You can imagine how that went with my dad.
Right.
So he took me to Auburn the first time, took me to campus. I went to I actually went down there. They took me when they used to keep the Eagle outside in that big, huge thing next to the football stadium. And it was like March or something. So it wasn't football season, and there wasn't really there wasn't much going on. It might've even been spring break. Because I remember not a lot of people being there, but the trainers were out there with the Eagles. And so I got a picture of me when I was 11 or 12 years old with the Eagle.
That's so
Auburn's
cool.
Eagle mascot on. Well, they don't actually put it on you, but they put it because that thing's huge.
Yeah.
But they put him right behind you. Kind of looks like he's on your shoulder there. And so that was sort of my introduction to that. And then it kind of grew from there. I went back later on, and I went to a game and more games. And my relationship with my dad was getting a little rough at that point in time. And so that's the genesis of my Auburn story. And I claim that
War Eagle Tigers.
Yeah. My first visit to campus, it was a really rough time in my life, and things, with my parents' divorce, which made the movie War of the Roses look like a comedy. Everybody there, it seemed like it was meant to be, because everybody there that I ran into, as I said, the Eagle trainers let me in and come over and took the Eagle next to me, and everybody was so nice to me. And hey, how you ever been here before? Well, welcome in, and all that kind of stuff. And so it sort of became like a surrogate home.
Yeah.
And so
nice.
when you develop feelings like that at that age, at such an impressionable age, that doesn't go away.
That's right.
And so here we are, whatever, 35. How old am I? No, about 40 years later. Yep, here we are. But getting back to the subject at hand. See, that's your job. That's your biggest job today.
I like to let you ramble.
Is to pull me back on. Let
you ramble, because
let me go tangential a little bit, but you got to reel me back in.
Nope. I like the ramble. That's what we do at the bar. We ramble.
So, so learning about a little bit more. I've always had that knack for composition inside of me. And one of the other things that really led me to love the still photo. I mean, video is awesome, and the things that we can do now with video are spectacular, but video to me psychologically is here and gone. It's here and gone. It's here and gone. There it is. There it goes. There it goes. There it goes. It's always moving. Where the still image is something that you can hold and you can basically step into. Yeah. You can stop that moment in time has been frozen forever, and you can step into that moment with the people or the things that are in that photograph.
Right.
And that's always really appealed to me. And when I was probably right at that same time, about 11 or 12 years old, my grandparents had given me a subscription to Sports Illustrated, and I haven't seen one in a while. I presume they still do this, but when back in the day, that was the opening pages were photographs. They were.
Oh, I thought you were going with the bikini edition, but never
No,
mind.
no. I don't think
Do
that
they
had
still
started
do that?
happening yet. I don't know. But it was the opening pages were photo spreads. And one thing that really grabbed me in particular was a shot of an NBA game. And I think it was probably the Lakers. And it was probably like, I don't know, Magic Johnson doing something, or Kareem or something like that. But I remember staring at that picture for so long. And I remember looking past the players, through the players and the action on the court, into the people that were in the crowd in the background. And it was just so captivating to me how that, 1/500th of a second caught in time painted a complete tapestry of 1,000 lives, or however many people were in that photograph. And looking and just starting to go and pick through and looking at all of the expressions and the body language on everyone's faces. And I think that is really what captivated me and brought me to photography. And still at that time, obviously I'm a young kid. I'm not even thinking about doing this. I wanted to be a race car driver for most of my whole life. I wanted to be a race car driver. And I wish Dave was still here, but you get that. Dave agrees with me. But my dad, after the rolls of film being returned, and me pilfering his camera equipment, for my 13th birthday, he got me my first 35 millimeter camera body and lens. And for Christmas that year, they got me a darkroom setup, my own darkroom setup. And so, yeah, they did it in classic bad parent bad comedy way, which was, I came downstairs and there was probably 70 presents wrapped. And I'm like, holy shit, look at this. It's the biggest bounty ever. Well, and they're like, here, unwrap this one. And so I took the first one, and it was like a plastic tray. And I'm going, thank you.
Oh, I see.
I loved it. So, you see where I'm going. They had individually wrapped every single component of the darkroom until we got to the big thing, which was the electronic developing equipment. And so right there at kind of 13, 14 is when I really started getting after it. And I pursued it as something that it wasn't even a hobby. It wasn't like quilting or water skiing. It was just something that I did, something that was kind of part of me that I did, that that started sowing the seeds early on. And I really actually, through later on in high school, by the time I got up to senior year in high school, I wasn't doing anything at all with it. Actually, my dad had, we were coming back from Road Atlanta, coming back from the races. And we stopped at a gas station somewhere outside of Flowery Branch. And my dad was throwing trash out of the back of the in a dumpster, out of the back of the pickup truck, bags of trash that we had from the weekend at the races. And along with it went my camera bag into the dumpster.
Oh, no.
Yeah, we didn't figure that out until we got home. And we were, like an hour and a half away.
Devastating.
Yeah, so there went my camera. And I didn't do anything with it at all again until people asked me if I went to school for it, and people asked me if I did it in the Marine Corps. And no, I did not. I did not come back to photography as a passion and then as a business and a career until I was about 40.
No kidding.
Yeah.
What did you do until then? I mean, before
what
then.
Didn't I do until then? I was a Marine, did that stuff, got out of the Marine Corps and decided, and I went back home to Atlanta and which was a disaster. Couldn't get along with my parents, girlfriend issues with that, long-term girlfriend breakup kind of stuff, horrible, horrible, horrible. So skip ahead a little bit. And I said, on a very cold, late November night, I talked to my friend Joe and I said, let's move to Key West. And he said, are you crazy? And I said, no, let's move to Key West. So we need some transportation. Neither one of us had a car. So we pooled our resources and paid $400 for a 10-year-old Fiero that the floorboard was rusted out of. And
those little boogers would haul though.
Yeah, we saved our resources and loaded my dog up, and it was two of us and my dog.
Where's
in a
your
Fiero,
dog fit?
Very carefully. There's a little slot right behind. There's a little kind of it's not even a jump seat. It's just an area that's about that wide right behind.
I mean, did you guys not have luggage or anything?
We had a bag, but we're going to Key West. What do you need? Right?
Well, that's
some
true.
flip-flops and a pair of shorts. But if you remember the engine, the Fiero is a mid-engine car. So the engine was right behind your head.
Right.
Which was wonderful for when we were homeless down there and it got chilly. And
it got chilly in Key West?
Well, relatively speaking.
Okay.
I mean, in February, when it gets down to 60, that feels like 40 anywhere else. And so I would sleep when we lived in that car for a month, and I slept on top of the engine compartment to stay warm.
Golly.
But yeah, so we jetted, we bolted, left life, and moved to Key West because I wanted to be Jimmy Buffett, and got down there and discovered that it's like the tropical version of that scene in the video for Welcome to the Jungle when Axel gets off the bus and he's got the hayseed hanging out of his mouth, and he's like, all of a sudden it's like, whoa, LA and Hollywood is not what I thought it was. And so we had to fight and claw that first couple of months, and we were living in our car. We were homeless, and we kept getting chased off by the cops until we finally ran into one nice cop who said, okay, look, dude, I shouldn't be telling you this, and don't tell anyone I told you this, but there's a place over there on South Roosevelt that if you go park over there, that's behind the bushes and nobody will mess with you over there. And so we lived there for about a month. Yeah, that was cool. We lived there for about a month. We took showers on the beach, at the beach shower, used the laundromat to keep our clothes clean. We got jobs. We actually for some stupid reason, you asked about what we took with us, if we had luggage. For some reason, I thought it would be a good idea to bring a phone, and pre-cell phone, a phone that you have to plug into the wall. I don't know. I mean, it turned out to be a sage maneuver because we actually found a telephone pole that had a phone jack in it.
What?
That we used to run our business, to like call places to get job interviews and things like that.
That's crazy.
We were resourceful, man. And so I got a job waiting tables at TGI Fridays, and he got a job in the kitchen at a pizza place downtown, down in Old Town Key West. And we made it happen. And he eventually took off probably less than a year later. And I stayed down there for 6 years.
Oh my gosh. That is incredible.
I got on, there's 12 more of these pod vidcasts worth of stories in my time in Key West, as I'm sure you can imagine. But I left there because I think that my time there I recognized that my time there was running short, or I was going to die prematurely with no liver. Because drinking is not a sport or an event or anything like that down there. It's just what you do. All day, every day. A lot of stories behind that. But anyway, so I had a couple of friends that lived on their sailboat, and they were moving up to Charleston. And so I happened to kind of mention, hey, man, I'd love to, jealous of you. I'd love to take that because I grew up on sailboats. He said, I'd love to take that trip with you. And he goes, why don't you? And I go, oh, why not?
Yeah,
I'll give it a go.
There you are.
See what I did there? And so I got on the boat. Yeah, I got on the boat with him, and we ended up taking the intercoastal the whole way up, and we stopped.
It's incredible.
every day. We didn't overnight it. The original plan was for them to overnight it outside the ditch, but we basically made a cruise out of it. And it took us about a month to get from Key West to Charleston. A
No
lot of
kidding.
adventures. And I eventually met the girl that I would marry, and she's still here, right over out there somewhere, 22 plus years later.
Yeah.
But I was still working. I'm getting there. I promise you, I'm getting there. So
That's all right.
I was still working in the service industry. So I began to 10 bar down in Key West, and so that pays the bills pretty well. And so I was doing that up in Charleston, but I was getting close to 30, and I was just done. I was done with the service industry. And like what you said about the recording industry with the drugs and the blah blah blah, that's essentially the same thing as the service industry. It'll wear you out. And so I actually met my beautiful bride at a bar in downtown Charleston, and she sort of plucked me out of the crowd as I was, didn't you, darling? As I was walking by on my shift, and she was there. She was a teacher at the time, and she was there with a couple of her girlfriends. And I was hauling ass back to the kitchen, and this hand reached out and grabbed my arm, and I was annoyed. I was annoyed. I can't even imagine what my facial expression was, because I was in a hurry and it was a busy Friday night. And I just looked at her, and she stuck her hand out and said, "Hi, my name's Meredith. I think you're new
Oh,
here." And I was new at that place. And she goes, "These are my friends, and we come here every Friday night." It was a dueling piano bar. It was a really
oh,
cool
I
place.
love that.
That's where I met her. That's where we met. And we exchanged. We still have the piece of paper torn in half that I pulled from my server notebook, where we each wrote down our phone numbers and exchanged our phone numbers. We still have that in a scrapbook. So I was still in the service business for a while, but I was actually starting to move towards the golf industry. Because I
Oh,
grew up, if you remember, Canterbury
I
used to have a
do.
golf course.
Cantaloupe Park.
I grew up on a golf course, and I, being in Charleston, Charleston is golf heavy. And so I started working in the golf business, which eventually led me to the caddy business, which was a great part of my life and provided a crazy amount of good experiences and opportunities for me. And I worked as a caddy and in caddy management as a caddy master all over the country for probably about, well, I did my last loop just a couple of years ago. I caddied for probably 20 years.
Oh,
And
wow.
God, what an amazing, awesome job that was. I met so many people that did a lot of things to help me. It was about sometime just before my 40th birthday. I decided to completely change everything in my life that was kind of tearing me apart, because one of the keys to evolving is learning that it's okay, and how to get rid of the parts of you that are holding you back. And
Yes.
it's
Very
scary for a lot
important.
of people, because you think, well, you're taking what do you want me to do? Be somebody else? But no, you have to examine what's going on. And if there's things worth keeping and going forward that you can grow on, keep them and take them with you, but learn what needs to die. Learn what parts of you need to die and be left behind. And so I went through that transformation at that time, and I had spent the previous, I don't know, 20 years trying to drink myself to death. And it was bad. It was really bad. And the atmosphere that I grew up in was a drinking atmosphere. Man, the 70s were a party atmosphere.
It
It
sure as
was,
shit was.
yeah. I mean, I'm sure your parents did the same thing
Oh,
too, which is
absolutely.
everybody in our neighborhood, the moms all belonged to the tennis club and the garden club, and the dads all played golf together and poker together and all that kind of stuff. And usually about once a month at somebody's house, they would host a party, and there would be 100 people there.
Absolutely.
And so it was a party, festive time, and that was the atmosphere I grew up in. And then add in the sailing, and add in the military, and add in all the other stuff, and it eventually compounds itself to where you can't control it anymore. I couldn't control it anymore. Not everybody has this problem. This is not, you know, and when I talk about this issue, and you and I discussed this briefly, and I don't, this is not a thing. It's not even, I don't even consider whether I should or shouldn't talk about it. It's just part of my life. And it's really an important part of the story that you want to know who I am. Well, this is part of it, and how I got to where I am, and why I hold some of the values that I hold today. And so, I mean, from when I got out of the Marines to when I decided to stop drinking, I mean, I had gained about 50 pounds. I was awful. I felt every morning, I felt like I was going to die when I got up. I could feel my heart wasn't doing well. And obviously I wasn't getting any kind of exercise. I mean, I was caddying, but so I was functioning, but I was physically, psychologically underneath, but physically addicted to the booze. I had gotten a job. A friend of mine had given me a really cool job doing sales on military bases, equipment sales on military bases. And my first day, I wanted to make a good impression. And so I didn't get all drunked up the night before, so I wouldn't be hungover. And when he picked me up, I was profusely pouring sweat because I hadn't consumed alcohol in like,
oh my gosh,
18 hours or something like that. That's where I was. That's how I was.
Wow.
I was a horrible, horrible sight to look at. And the fact that my wife is still here says a lot about her influence and her character, her influence on me and her character. But so, yeah, and I'm not part of the AA crowd. God bless them. They need to do whatever they need to do. I decided I made the decision to stop drinking cold turkey when my wife was willing to spend about $20,000 to send me to a detox rehab facility.
Wow.
$20,000, which we did not have.
Yeah.
She was willing at that point to do that for my derelict, broken ass. That snapped me to the point where I was like, you know what? I owe this to her.
Wow.
And so I quit drinking cold turkey, and I never had ever had another drink. You know, I even had another thought about it. It didn't even bother me.
That's amazing.
And I was terrified about all the stories that you hear about the DTs and bugs crawling on your skin and all that kind of stuff. And I never went through that. It was physically painful for about a year. It was physically painful as my body recovered from all those toxins. But so at that point, when I made that decision to do that, it was kind of like changing everything. I had to change everything.
Yeah.
You can't hang out with the same people. You have nothing in common anymore. When you take the liquor away, it's like, what are we going to do? Go out drinking? Nope.
Exactly.
Complete life change. And with that came the realization of I need a mission that will not only fulfill me, make a little money, which would be nice. Got to pay the bills, but that was something that I could do. That was part of me that would continue to challenge me, and that I could take with me, or at least, if not, who knows what forever is, but for at least as long as I could see, I could physically and figuratively. But, and so I started researching cameras again. And so this is where it came back to me.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Actually, I picked up, we had an old crappy digital camera, one of those little silver things that goes,
right.
And I started getting back into abstract composition. I started going around the house and around the yard and around town, taking like when I was a little kid, taking abstract still life photos. Talked to her about budget and what we could afford, and I pushed into getting myself set up with some new Canon equipment. And
that's fantastic. So, I mean, really, it's never too late. It's never too late. A lot of people are like what I was saying earlier, you decided to come back to this at 40. It's never too late.
Yeah. And what really the catalyst for my business, for Scott Schroeder Photography, outside of just, you know, taking pictures for fun or for a hobby or for something to do, we happened to be in our little town back at that time when our little town was much smaller. This was about 11 or 12 years ago. My wife and I decided we go one Friday night, go to the local high school football game, because when she was teaching here, she was teaching middle school here before we left and did our circuit around the world and came back. And so some of her kids, we still knew some of the teachers and some of the administrators, and some of her kids were now in high school and they were playing football, and we're like, part of the community, let's go do that thing. And even though we didn't have any kids there, we went to the football game, and I took my camera with me, and I just started walking around taking pictures of various things and people. And Facebook was a thing at this point in time, which was a big part of this.
Yeah.
And so I would go down to the fence line, and I had a little bit of a telephoto lens, and I would take what I could of some of the players and some action shots and some of the players on the sidelines. And I started to post a couple of them on Facebook, and the avalanche of, oh my God, can you take my picture?
That's awesome.
Started happening. But so I'm like, yeah, I'm going down there. I'm just going to walk down there. And the gate was open, where they had the gate, the double gates where the ambulance can drive on the field if there's an injury. And so that gate was open, and I just walked down there, and I'm kind of like, minding my own business. And I'm like, I don't know, is there security? Is there somebody that's going to snipe me from a bell tower, or, security going to come tackle me?
Honestly.
So eventually I just said, to hell with it. And I got enough courage to walk out onto the sidelines, acting like
you belong there.
Like I belonged there.
That's right.
Acted like I belonged there. And I started taking pictures, and I got some really, really kick-ass action shots that I eventually would, the newspaper would hire me to do once they saw these. And then even more of the parents and the kids from the high school would ask for my shots. And I was glad to share anything with anybody at that time. And that was the nugget, the genesis of Scott Schroeder Photography. Because after that, I decided, you know what, I love this. I love this more than anything I've ever done. And I think I'm good enough to make money at it. And so I started setting up the mechanisms of my business, and we decided we had to pick a name. And I had a graphic designer that my wife worked with do a logo for us, which is still the same logo we have to this day. You don't need to rebrand if you have a solid, classic, everlasting, evergreen brand. So we got that, and set up the electronic part of it, marketing with social media and with the website. And I went live, so to speak, as a professional photographer. And there's so much fun and cool and interesting stuff. And we can talk about anything that you want with
until it's a wedding on the beach.
Oh boy. Yes. Let's talk about the wedding on the beach. But the really cool thing is, and I'll complete the loop and then jump back into the loop, that walking out, taking my camera to that football game, and then deciding to say, give it a go. Why not? Walk down on that field and take pictures and see what happens, led to kids and parents at that school wanting me to do their kids' senior pictures. It also led to the head coach, the football coach, seeing my stuff on Facebook and in the newspaper and going, you want to be our official team photographer? So nice. I was their team photographer for 5 years or so. Also led to me getting a contract with the school district, where I did all of the team photography for 6 schools. And I was doing all of the student and faculty and staff photography for one of the private Catholic schools in the area. And this is just building and building and building, all because I decided to take a chance and do a thing, have the courage to do something that's a little outside, maybe something that you would do, and do it. And it built from there. And to this, in December, I am photographing the wedding of a young lady who, her family was one of the first family photo sessions I did when I first started my business 11 years ago.
Oh my
And
gosh.
she was 11 or 12 years, 11 years old at the time. And now I'm shooting her wedding.
That's amazing. How
And
fun.
one of the coolest aspects of my business, being in a quasi small town. We used to be a real small town, but we've grown a little bit, but it's still that small town feeling. Everybody knows everybody, everybody knows what everybody does and all that kind of stuff. I have groups of families where I have taken all of their kids' senior pictures, all of their kids' athletic pictures, all of their family pictures, all of their daughters' wedding pictures, and now their grandchildren. The daughters are having children.
Wow.
And so that is so cool. And not only is it amazing for psychological and spiritual health and growth, but the money we talked about, you got to pay the bills. I mean, there's certain realities in life. And so the chance that I took is now paying our bills and, put my kid through school and doing all that kind of stuff because I took my camera to that football game and walked down on that sideline. But
that's an amazing story.
You never forget what led up to that moment, what led up to that. Because we talk about, well, how'd you end up here? Well, there's 9 million things that happened that led me to there. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't have been there. Sure as hell wouldn't have been there without my wife. I wouldn't have been there. I probably wouldn't have been there. I guarantee you, if my parents had been divorced, and to kind of go back to that, when you talk about how it strengthened you, mm-hmm. If my parents had not gotten divorced, I would likely still have been doing just fine in school. I was an excellent student. I probably would have gone to college right out of high school and done something, who knows, accounting or whatever in the hell I would have ended up doing. And I wouldn't be here. And there's parts of this life of mine have been like being dragged through glass that was on top of a furnace. But I can't possibly imagine at this point, I can't imagine my life being any different. I can't imagine doing anything else. And you always talk about regrets and wishes and what ifs and all that kind of stuff. And there's just no place for that. There's no place for that if you want to continue growing forward. And
absolutely.
So that
you have to make mistakes. You have to make bad decisions in order to learn to make good ones.
And you have to not be you have to be in an environment where you're not fearful of making mistakes.
Right.
And you can't just be acting all willy-nilly and doing whatever the hell you do without any sort of consequences, which sounds awfully familiar these days. But, and that's that walking out on the edge thing that all children, all developing children, adolescents, and kids, young adults need to do, which is be able to walk out on that edge. And while you're still young enough, while you're still at home, the parents need to be there with the guardrails, but they don't need to be the hovering, the snowplow, right, the lawnmower, the helicopter parent. That's antithetical to human development, but be there with the guardrails. And so they can learn, so they can push it. And that's why it's one of the hardest things in the world is to be the parent that lets your kid play on the monkey bars when probably they're a little too small. Mm-hmm. Let them walk out on that edge. Let them stretch. Let them figure out. And if they get hurt, they get hurt. I mean, kids are resilient. They're made out of rubber, right? Cartilage.
I just don't want to spend the night in the emergency room because that shit sucks.
Does that.
But so, and I think it's amazing to hear how you went from this to that to this to here, and then circled back around to what was an original passion and found it when you did, and all the events that brought it in, and now you have this amazing career with it, which is incredible. It's like you had to go through it, but the main thing is you had to be brave.